Your internet is fine. So is the brightness on your screen, actually. You're watching this on Wednesday, but I'm actually working this on Tuesday. The day that many of us woke up to see many of our friends' profile pictures that had been completely blacked out. I scrolled through Facebook this morning and I was ready to change my picture as well when I had this weird moment of concern that me doing so would actually be offensive to my friends and those that I love who put on a badge every day and go to work and do so with valor and honor in such an incredibly difficult job. Those who serve and protect our communities, and I didn't want to inflict harm or offend them as I do my best to show love and support for those who are suffering. And I gotta be honest, I was really frustrated with that because for whatever reason, probably Facebook, I felt like I couldn't do both of those same things at the exact same time, which is absolutely stupid. While I was debating this in my head, I read this post about the frustration that the communities of color were having with all of these posts and updates from their white friends who they were grateful for, but despite their best intentions, they were now having their voices drowned out once again. And so I chose not to change my profile picture today, or frankly do much of anything on Facebook other than reading and trying to listen and understand. I really wanted to post my thoughts, but I also realized that frankly social media sucks, and I would be adding my voice to this absolute cacophony that Facebook has become in recent days. And then the words of one of my past pastoral bosses ring in my head, who had told me that I should never speak into controversy. I shouldn't take sides because it puts an unnecessary barrier up to the gospel, and that it can split the unity of the church, which must remain my primary goal at all times. And you know what? I recognize the wisdom in those words. I don't ever want to hinder the gospel. My job, my very calling, is to advance the gospel of Jesus Christ at all times and in all places. And there's wisdom in those words. But there's also cowardice. There's weakness and timidity. Because it's advice like that that continues to keep the church on the sidelines of some of the most important issues of my entire life. Words like that relegate us to ineffectiveness, and they keep us from speaking into the reality of the world that we are currently living in right now. And so I'm taking that advice and I'm tossing it in the trash. And we're going to see if it ends up being good advice or not. And so here I am, sitting in my peaceful, wonderful backyard. The birds are chirping and my day is full of promise and possibility. I could do pretty much anything I want. I could go for a jog, I could head into the office, I could make a trip to Lowe's. In none of those cases would I fear for my life. Because I've run in this neighborhood for the last 14 years, and I've never worried about being chased down and murdered by a couple of dudes in a pickup. It has literally never crossed my mind. There's a house just up the hill from us that's being built. I've walked around it, I've peeked in, I've admired the layout. I've never worried that that would get me murdered. And when I head into work, Crystal doesn't have to worry about my safety because I don't have to put bulletproof armor on when I head out for the day. I've never had to have conversations with my boys about what to do if we're out somewhere in public and I have to jump into action. I don't have to worry about who knows what job I have. I don't have to hide my address or my phone number or my uniform from the general public in order to protect my family's safety. And when I go to Lowe's and I walk down an aisle and there's only one lady standing in that aisle, I'm met with a smile and a sense of relief because I'm 6'7" and I can grab anything off of that top shelf without calling for somebody to get that massive rolling ladder. But you change my skin to look like my brother-in-law Morris, I'd get a very different response. Because there's something different about a 6'7" black man walking up to you when you're all alone that triggers that subconscious response, whether you want it to or not. I've been so frustrated watching my friends and my acquaintances on Facebook create sides in this insanity and then bash those who choose the other side. Because either you're for Black Lives Matter or you're a racist. You either support the police or you're an anarchist. You either love the president and you're a racist, or you hate the president and you're a baby killer. You were either outraged by the execution of George Floyd and all police are evil, or everybody who's protesting is a violent rioter and looter. All of that is nonsense, and we know it. Of course, you should be outraged by the murder of George Floyd, and you should absolutely support our police officers. You should call for change in the system and an end to the wanton destruction and violence in our streets. You should weep over the reality of abortion in our country and want everybody to have affordable health care. You can absolutely pray for our president and his advisors every single day and call on him to be better when he fails to live up to the basic standards of presidential leadership. This is the incredible benefit of being an adult. You can care about more than one thing at a time. You can work on more than one thing at a time, despite constantly hearing people say, well, but what about? This world is full of nuance, and it is not binary. As adults, we have the capacity to understand complex things and have a multitude of facts laid out on the table before us. Not only are we adults, but we are followers of Jesus. And we are called at all times to live lives that live up to the command of Jesus to love one another, not as we want to love or as we have been loved, but as Jesus loves us. And so do I stand with those who take to the streets and cry out that Black lives matter? Yeah, absolutely I do. And I'm trying to understand the pain and the trauma and the anger that's brought our nation to this point while realizing I will never fully understand because I'm a tall, middle-aged, middle-class white guy. And I just don't know what it's like to live that life. I probably never will. And do I call out those who are rioting and looting and destroying the livelihoods of their friends and neighbors in our very community? Absolutely I do. Because adding to the fear and the trauma and the resentment is not the way that we should be bringing about the peace and justice that we all desire. And yet at the very same time, I can only imagine the rage and the resentment that boils just below the surface when peaceful protests have been ignored and shamed for decade after decade after decade. Do I stand with our police officers? Absolutely I do. I know and love police officers, and I am aware of their courage and their valor and their self-sacrifice in the face of an incredibly difficult job, and I am in awe of that. They put their safety and the safety of their families on the line every day, and I admire them greatly. Do I call for the prosecution of officers who brutally attack, harm, or kill people? Absolutely I do. There is no place in our police force or our country for people like that, and we must demand justice that flows like a never-ending river and washes out our precincts and cleans them of the filth that has tarnished their badge for far too long. One of the most sacred duties that I have as a pastor is to sit with those who are in the midst of the darkest moments of their lives. Moments that they are not sure that they're ever going to be able to walk out of. The death of a daughter or a mother, the wreckage of a marriage, the weight of a terminal diagnosis. My role in those moments is to be the physical representation of Jesus, to sit with them, to pray with them, to hold them, to offer them words of comfort and hope. But mostly it's to listen and to hear the pain and to acknowledge the depth of their sorrow and their trauma. It doesn't fix the problem, and oftentimes it doesn't feel like it's been made any better, at least from where I sit. But I can't think of a better first step in this process that we're going to have to work through together. I don't know what the next step is after that, or when we're going to be ready to take that next step, but I do know that I am not the one who should be making that decision. It's not my place. And so for now, I'm going to do what I've been called to do. I will mourn with those who mourn. I will weep with those who weep. I will comfort the afflicted, support those who serve with honor, and I will call for justice for those who don't, and listen to those who've been silenced for far, far too long. As for me and my house, we choose to love and serve.